Hello my treasures! The next Hearthstone year has been revealed, Year of the Pegasus, which also served as Hearthstone's original code word when it was originally in development. This also marks the 10-year anniversary of the game, so we're going to get a lot of 10-year anniversary themed updates within this year, including the next twist format, which should be a blast from the past throughout Hearthstone's history. But let's begin with the general information of Year of the Pegasus. The core set, of course, is going to be upgraded. We'll be going over that a little bit later in the video, but to get the party started, we're going to have a mini set before, I'm assuming, the actual set comes out, where we're going to have 13 new cards, which includes the Innkeeper himself, Hearthstone Brew. We don't know what he does. We know we also are going to be getting one card for each individual class, which should be interesting. We can't really read what these say either. And hot off the presses, we are going to actually look at those 13 new cards. The first one is going to be Hearthstone Brew, which is a 6 cost, 5 attack, 5 HP minion. Battlecry, replace your hand with an iconic one from Hearthstone's past once per game, which means you can't duplicate this multiple times, which makes him a little bit worse, but we don't also know what exactly this is going to foretell. I'm assuming it's going to look at some like key historical matches from Hearthstone's esports, or it could look at some key combos that have happened throughout Hearthstone's history. Either way, this could be a lot of fun to play around with, and I can't wait to try to do something with this card. Now for the 12 spells. The first one is going to be Arthas's Gift, which is a 1-cost spell that discovers a temporary Dark Transformation, Howling Blast, or Death Strike. Basically 3 iconic cards from each individual type of DK deck. And then all of these other cards are going to do something very similar, though I do think Howling Blast is probably going to be the one that you choose 90% of the time in DK. Illidan's Gift is going to give you a temporary copy of Fel Barrage, Chaos Strike, or Chaos Nova. For this one, it's a little bit more flexible just because of the fact that there is draw power, there is spot removal, or just AoE damage depending on what deck you're actually playing. Then we have Malfurion's Gift, which is discover a temporary Feral Rage, Wild Growth, or Swipe. This is going to be great for the fact that we are losing out on the ramp package in Druid and might actually see a lot of play because of this. Then we have Rexar's Gift, which discovers a temporary Quick Shot, Deadly Shot, or Explosive Shot. Quick Shot is probably the best out of in most scenarios, though Deadly Shot can come up. Jaina's Gift gives a temporary Frostbolt, Arcane Intellect, or Fireball. Most of the time, you're probably going to choose either Arcane Intellect or Fireball just to finish off your opponent. Uther is going to give either Equality, Consecration, or Blessing of Kings. This is kind of flexible, though I will say probably won't see too much play. Equality is nice because we do have a lot of AoE, and that would probably be your choice most of the time. Anduin's Gift discovers a temporary Power Word Shield, Shadow Word Pain, or Mind Control. Mind Control could be incredibly strong, even if it is a 10-mana spell, just since you can steal one of your opponent's key minions, but most of the time you're probably going to go for the additional draw power in Power Word Shield. Then we have Valera's Gift, which is Backstab, Deadly Poison, or Fan of Knives. Great for Weapon Rogue, though a lot of that support is rotating out. Thrall's Gift is Lightning Bolt, Hex, or Bloodlust. It also makes sense why a lot of these cards are rotating out. Most of the time, if you're in an aggro deck, you'll probably choose Bloodlust, but the other two can actually come up. Quite flexible here. Then Gul'dan's Gift is either Mortal Coil, Siphon Soul, or Twisting Nether. Extremely flexible, probably will see some type of play. Garrosh Gift, it's a Execute, Shield Block, or Brawl. Great for Control Warrior. Overall, I think all these cards are low enough power level where they're not absolutely broken, but most of them are at least playable within their respective classes. Next month's twist format is going to be insane. This is going to be a march through Hearthstone's entire history of cards that have been released, where each individual day will add a different set until we get to the last day of month, where every single card that has ever been printed in Hearthstone will be legal. I will say this makes this incredibly difficult to make any type of content for this format, which means I probably will not be doing it. However, it will make for some good like stream content, so we'll be doing it on stream at least once a week until everything rotates out. But outside of the twist format, we should look over the new card changes for the core set for Year of the Pegasus. We're going to have some iconic cards return, such as Leroy, War Axe, Trueheart, and Wrath of the Air Totem. Leroy I'm a little bit afraid of just because there's so many bounce backs in Rogue right now that you could easily OTK your opponent with that. Now, let's look at the new cards that have been revealed, which are going to be inspired by Warcraft Rumble. The first one is going to be Nomela, Safe Pilot, a 6-cost 4 attack, 2 HP minion. Also damages minions next to whoever this attacks. It deals 2 damage to all enemies when it dies. Now, this is one of those cards that a lot of the Death Rattle support is actually going to be eroding out, which kind of sucks for it. However, I do think this card has a lot of potential as just like a neutral AoE tool, since it does allow you to basically AoE twice instead of once. Pretty strong in my opinion, and probably will see some play in the classes that historically don't have access to much AoE. Night Elf Huntress is a 5-cost 3 attack 3 HP minion. Battlecry, deal 3 damage to 3 different enemies. You pick the targets. Great, just targeted removal. You could hit your opponent's face while also getting rid of 2 of your opponent's minions, so you can hit your opponent's face with other minions that you have on board. Overall, I think it costs a little bit too much to see too much play, but it does have a little bit of potential. And finally, we have Footman, who is a 4 HP, 2 attack, 5 HP minion with taunt. Adjacent minions are immune while attacking. Okay, so these 2 cards are meant to be used with each other. Outside of using these 2 with each other, I don't think either of these see too much play, though this does have a lot more potential just because of the fact that there are a few minions that you get a lot of advantage of just giving them immune for a turn. Then we have a new keyword, which is something that I was talking about when I was playing this month's Twist format. Elusive. Elusive is going to replace the text on cards that cannot be targeted by spells or hero powers. Just makes it easier to read. And now we have the core card shakeups. I will say before we get into this, I will be going over the individual themes of cards that each class will be losing. I will not be going over each individual card themselves unless it is a big impact card. So let's begin. DK seems to be losing a lot of the Unholy support that was in the core set that made Unholy DK actually pretty decent just by itself with only 3 cards. They should actually cut back on the number of bots that we will be seeing in standard, just because of the fact that you no longer have access to a lot of these really good generic cards for Unholy that didn't require you to pay any money. That's probably honestly the reason why they're removing Marigar, Bone Geist, and Graveyard Shift. That would be my assumption. That just seems like a very easy hit for Blizzard to do without impacting the game too much. For Blood, we're losing something like Patchwork and Obliterate. These are the 2 cards that are probably most important to Blood that you're losing. I really wish we could have seen Patchwork stick around, but I get why it isn't. It would make the games feel incredibly same if they kept every single Blood card available to the class. And then we're going to be losing Overseer, which was just good generic draw power for Frost, which is probably the biggest hit out of all these cards. But cards that will be gaining in the core set and some of the changes that will be seen will actually impact the game by quite a bit. First off, the searchers for both Unholy Rune and Blood Rune are only going to require 1 rune, making these cards incredibly strong in Unholy, giving you access to a lot more cards that you didn't have access to before, which means Rainbow DK, which was already incredibly strong, is going to be even better than before. Probably going to be the top tier DK deck, even if we do have things like Plague DK floating around right now. Blood, we are also going to be seeing Soul Stealer go down to 2 runes instead of 3, which means it can be discovered, which is going to be quite annoying again in Rainbow DK. Vampiric Blood sticking around is good for Blood because this does allow the deck to fully function, though we also are going to be seeing things like Frostworm's Fury and Horn of the Windlord stick around, making a burn Frost DK list possible still. Overall, I don't think DK is losing actually that too much value in the rotation and is actually gaining a lot of value that will probably stick around for at least the entire core rotation, and it could be cool to see Rainbow DK become even more powerful than it already is, Now let's get onto Demon Hunter. There are only going to be 4 changes for Demon Hunter, where basically the 3 cards that we're losing are 3 cards that never really saw any play. Honestly, I don't think Demon Hunter is gaining too much, and I don't think they're losing too much outside of the cards that they are going to be losing in their natural rotation anyways. Now, Druid is the class that is probably losing the absolutely most out of every individual class. They are uprooting the entire identity of the class, removing the entire wrap package. By removing this package from Druid, sure, every deck in Druid isn't going to play exactly the same, but I really don't know what direction Druid is going to be going in, just because of the fact that there are so many cards that you're just going to be missing out on, and all of the most recent cards printed for Druid are balanced around the fact that you can ramp up really quickly. Given the fact that Dragon is going to be the only archetype within Druid that can ramp up now, I do worry about the state of Druid being completely unplayable. I know a lot of people will be really happy about that, but it does make me worry by quite a bit. It's going to be in a similar position to where Priest was the entire year, where we didn't really have any direction to go in, and the core set matters a lot. Now for Hunter, we're going to notice something here that is something that I've been wanting for about a year now. Even though I love me some King Crush has basically overstayed his welcome. All Hunter cards are balanced around the fact that you can generate a ton of additional copies of King Crush. This will also kill some of the big Hunter decks that are floating around right now, but that deck has been floating around for at least like 4 years, so it's finally nice to see maybe some additional room for other archetypes to appear. Though Hunter is also going to be gaining a lot of secret support and other additional ways to instantly draw into a lot of your beasts, such as Master's Call or the secret package of Ice Trap and Rat Trap. This could, in theory, make Secret Hunter a lot stronger than it currently is. And we also will be seeing a big payoff for Secret Hunter in the form of the Spellstone, which is cool. That's something that the deck has historically been missing, is a payoff, and whenever it gets enough support, it's always missing 1 or 2 big payoffs to be really strong, but this should push the deck forward by quite a bit. Now let's get onto Mage. 2 key cards that Mage are losing access to is Agwyn and Pyroblast. Pyroblast didn't really see too much play. However, Millhouse is a card that was printed at the beginning of this year, and this was one of the biggest payoffs that you could run in that deck, making that card even worse than it currently is, making me worry a little bit more about that overall theme. Agwyn, this is something that, similar to King Crush, has been around for quite a while, and whenever it does see play, it feels a little bit more toxic, and we also have a easy replacement in the form of Sif for this entire format. And cards that will be rotating back in, the one that will matter the most is Primordial Glyph, just as a way to get additional copies for Rainbow Mage, and Frostbolt, which will allow us to freeze additional targets. I'm curious if we'll be seeing a lot more free support within this year, because I think Blizzard is probably going to be trying to revisit a lot of iconic decks, since a lot of the previous new core editions seem to feel under that role too. Now, for Paladin. Paladin is a class that is basically losing nothing. All 4 of these cards never really saw any play. Lothraxian is the card that probably matters the most out of all 4 of these. Lothraxian is one of those cards that I really wish was playable, but he is just a little bit too slow. And the cards that are going to be replacing all of these are basically better buffs that you can give your minions on board that give you additional advantage, while also having Lady Liandrin as a bigger generic payoff for Paladin. But let's get onto Priest, which actually is winning quite a bit. Priest is going to be losing Archbishop Benedictus, which means Shadow Priest isn't going to be around all the time. That kind of sucks. I kind of wish they would do something similar to DK, where they made a restriction where you could just run all shadow spells and you got the shadow form hero power instead of the holy hero power, but I get why they don't do that. And Shard of the Naru is the other biggest hit when it comes to the Priest cards that they are losing. This is a card that's basically been in every single Priest control list since it's been in rotation for about 4 years, and it is time for it to rotate out. Now for the cards that will be gaining, Resurrection Priest seems to be what's on the table. This will give Priest a nice deck to go into the new year. This is something that is very iconic to the priest class and very frustrating to play against. However, I do worry that by relying on a lot of these older cards for Resurrection Priest, they do cost a lot, making them a little bit weaker in the current state of Hearthstone Standard, making it harder to actually get full advantage off of this type of stuff. We also don't have ways to easily cheat out statue from the deck right now that I can easily think of, making this card a lot harder to abuse than it was in the past. Overall, I do think Resurrection Priest is going to be an interesting deck just because we do have things like Raw Din that are currently here in rotation and should be pretty powerful if we get the right support in later on sets. Now for Rogue. Rogue is going to be losing the secret package, which sucks, which means there's only going to be 2 classes in the entire standard rotation that has access to secrets. Rogue also is going to be gaining a lot of interesting random cards. Flick is probably the most useful card out of the entire bunch here. Sap and Raiding Party are probably the only other 2 that could see play. Sap allows you to get rid of one of your opponent's key taunts, so you can ram your Leroy Jenkins into your opponent's face. Raiding Party would have been great if we had all of the pirate support. That is rotating out of standard, but because it is rotating out, I am very curious if we'll be seeing additional pirate support for the rogue class, though I think we'll be seeing quite a bit of pirates later on in the year given the graphics that were revealed. For Shaman, we are going to be losing out on Eyesore, Doomhammer, Bloodlust. All 3 of these cards are incredibly impactful. We're also going to be losing out on Strength Totem, which is okay. I don't really care too much about that. Also, cards that will be gaining in the rotation are going to be Calamos, Primal Lord. Not a card that matters too much. I think it's a little bit too slow. We're going to be gaining some spell damage support, so I'm curious if we'll be seeing a spell damaging Shaman deck pop up, especially given the fact that we do have Nature Shaman that has historically a lot of spell damage and a lot of ways to do direct damage to your opponent's face. That could be a worrying archetype depending on how you want to view it. Now for Warlock. Warlock's honestly not going to lose much outside of the Imp support, but all the Imp cards that are in rotation right now are going to be rotating out, so I don't think that's that big of a deal. Cards that will be gaining instead are things like Doomguard, which is incredibly strong. Being able to discard 2 cards should allow easy access for Sludge to have an additional 5 damage just to go directly to your opponent's face. We also will have a good removal tool and a way to heal yourself up a little bit through Lesser Spellstone, which is incredibly strong there. Ways to do more additional damage to your own face, or Hand Warlock support, which we'll be seeing a lot of support for in the neutral pool, so we'll be going over that a little bit later. Warrior is basically losing a bunch of cards that they never used. The only 2 that really kind of matter are Sword Eater and Cruel Taskmaster. This one is great for Enraged Warrior, which kind of sucks to see this gone, but a lot of the Enraged Warrior support is going to be rotating out, though over here you can see one of them sticking in. Sword Eater also kind of sucks because it does kill completely one of the cards from Delve into Deep Home for Rogue, as this was going to be a 100% chance to always generate this off of that card. However, we do see a replacement for that in the form of Cargo Guard, though I rather have Sword Eater. Honestly speaking, Deathwing Mad Aspect is something that could be a little bit worrisome because this could become quite easily a 24/24, making it strong that way, though I don't think any deck is going to want to run this. It is good for a Control Warrior, I guess, but outside of that, it seems a little bit too slow. The Rush support is cool. We'll probably see some type of Rush support and Warrior later on. Now for the core set. For the core set, we'll be losing 2 of the newer Dragon Aspects retrains, so we're no longer going to be able to do 8 damage, which sucks for Dragon Druid. Outside of that, I don't think that's going to matter too much. The only one of these legendaries that's going to matter too much is Ziliax, since this does make Automation Priest a little bit worse. And then for the other cards that we're going to be losing, Explosive Sheep is probably the one that matters the most, along with Tour Guide. Tour Guide was used in basically every Warlock deck while it was in rotation again. And Explosive Sheep is just generic AoE that some classes could have used much. Now for the cards that are going to be added into the neutral pool, Alexstrasza is a little bit worrisome just because this does allow you to set your opponent's HP to 15 and maybe OTK your opponent or set up a 2-turn kill instead. Ysera being reworked to give you 2 dream cards at the end of the turn could be interesting, but I think she costs a little bit too much. Samot becoming a 7/7/7 cost is interesting, but again, I don't think this will matter that much. True Heart probably will matter. Control Warrior will probably want to use this card, especially given the fact that Odin is currently in rotation and this is basically a free 4 damage per turn. Molten Giant and Mountain Giant is incredibly strong for Hand Warlock and probably will be incredibly usable in even Sludge Warlock. Also worth pointing out that Mind Control Tech no longer targets a random minion. It now allows you to choose one. However, it is requiring your opponent to have 4 or more minions instead of 3, making it a little bit worse there. But being able to just straight up steal one of your opponent's key minions could be really, really frightening. Then Stonehill Defender, we knew this was going to be coming back. Great support for Taunt Warrior. And then Slither Sphere, I really wish this card would have just stayed gone. Naga Demon Hunter isn't really losing much in the rotation. And then Wandmaker is probably the card that matters the most in the remaining cards, just because this allows you to access some key 1-cost spells that you wouldn't have normal access to additional copies. Overall, though, I will say a lot of the classes are actually gaining a lot more than they're losing. The only class I'm really, really worried about is Druid. But honestly, Ramp Druid has kind of overstayed its welcome at this point, and I get why they're removing it. I just hope we don't turn Druid from a control/combo deck into just pure aggro, because honestly, it just marks another class that I just don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. But overall, let me know down below like what cards you're most looking forward to using. But like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.